You started your current role very close to the start of the pandemic. So how has that journey been for you?
It has been a very interesting journey. I mean, I started right about the time, the closures of airport travel and all that was hitting in. And I joined here. I live close to Boston, so I joined here in Boston. And the very next day, I got a notice that all the travels and everything is canceled. No more travel. And every interaction I've had with all the leadership here at IBM as I joined in was virtual. The way the organization, I saw them transition over, leveraging all the collaboration technologies and making things still happen, not only internally within IBM, but also for our customers, how quickly we pivoted to working with them, collaborating and delivering our work with them. And also, most of them, especially joining in the supply chain group, a lot of our customers started prioritizing the supply chain initiatives, which essentially were more towards all hands on the deck. We need to make sure, our supply chains are cranking out the processes as per the schedule, and then we're not having disruptions. It has actually been a very fascinating, almost like a back to the future kind of a transition, right? I went right into the whole what you always think that you would plan for future, that eventually people will collaborate a lot, and suddenly you end up in an organization where you are seeing that collaboration happening at scale, and then also working with customers who are now prioritizing and fast scaling their supply chain initiatives at an amazing speed. And the amount of ingenuity I saw in the recent few months, around 7 or 8 months here, in terms of tackling some of those challenges where people thought this would be something we would achieve in, say, 1 year or 2 years. For example, starting to leverage AI for getting better demand insights, right? I spoke about like how we worked with one of our customers to kickstart something in 4 weeks to start generating really hyper local insights, right? We started working on scraping supply chain data for them, bringing in the insights of how the demand patterns were changing for them, and how they could really understand at a zip code level, at a county level, how the COVID impact is on not only their products in terms of sales, but also the mix. Like, for example, what is selling more? Are you selling family packs? Are you selling single packs of products? And that all got done within 4 weeks. So that is something which I saw as a fascinating thing, because in my prior experience, when we spoke about doing innovation at agile scale or doing things in supply chains or initiatives, it always was about, all right, 8 weeks, we'll figure out what we want to do. And then 16 weeks or 20 weeks, we start seeing results. But now we're talking about 4 weeks, delivering results, 8 weeks, putting it into production so that they can quickly respond to it. Absolutely. So that's been a very fascinating journey.
No, I'm sure. So we've, we're obviously end of second day here. So yesterday we spoke with Keith from Coca-Cola about kind of, a lot of his thing was about empowering employees and all that sort of stuff. But within that, data came up, insights came up, making changes based on technology. Willie was here talking about his freight expectations for 2021. But again, data came up, insight came up, how you use technologies to ease these things. Throughout today, technology has always been there as this way to, people talk about flexibility and resiliency in the supply chain as opposed to optimize for efficiency. But there's still obviously a demand and a desire to optimize for efficiency. So we're heading for that sort of best of both worlds, I guess, way. So the first question then, and the big one, the one we've kind of been, sort of flagging throughout this, what are likely the biggest technologies or trends, do you think, in supply chain over the next 5 years?
I mean, there is a lot happening, right? I mean, make no mistake, there are so many technologies which have had so much of big impact already. AI and ML has become much more mainstream. So for me to count what is the next big thing and still call AI, I think that wouldn't be the right one. I would say the big shifts or the big things which you're going to see right now come up is the much higher leverage of IoT, edge computing, being enmeshed far more. I think it's, again, tying back to what you mentioned about data, right? I think edge computing and IoT is going to be a really next level of breakthrough we are going to see in, because we are seeing higher computing powers, we are seeing a higher ability to consume and make real-time analysis of the data. So the more and more we start uncovering these dark data, which resides in the supply chain, maybe using IoT or the edge computing, the better we are going to get as one of the big impact areas. The second, I think, is more than a technology. I think it's leveraging of technology. I think it's a whole concept of platform of platforms, interconnectivity and collaboration, because people are going to now start realizing that as they look at the overall supply chain, the weakest link is going to be wherever there's a gap between collaboration of data sharing and information sharing. So I think that's going to be a big shift in the next few years from a technology perspective, as we see either platforms being brought together by integrations or people investing in cross-enterprise business networks, right? You can name them control towers, you can name them anything, but I like the term multi-enterprise business networks. A lot of analysts talk about that as well. I think that's going to be a major thrust as we go forward. And then finally, I think there's going to be another aspect which I'm looking at. Blockchain finally, I think, would be getting more and more relevant. More from perspective of, rather than using the trust cases of traditional use cases we have thought of from financial, I think in supply chain, there are going to be using blockchain for automating certain processes as well. As you bring in transparency and trust using blockchain, there are opportunities for bringing in automation and removing the friction within a lot of the transactions. I think that's going to be another area which is going to see significant improvement. When I say improvement, I mean like investments going forward, and we are already seeing customers talking about how can they leverage technologies in those areas.
Well, in fact, Ranjan Ghosh, who was our closing keynote interview yesterday, called out IBM for some of your work around blockchain. Do you want to sort of maybe expand upon that a little bit?
Sure. So I think IBM indeed is a great leader, and I think one of the foremost companies which has been investing in a blockchain technology, and we've been using it not only for external use, but a lot of internal capabilities as well. Just as an example, we're looking to use blockchain. For example, there's already a live use case. We are working with manufacturers of food, when I say meat and beef and others, and helping them track using blockchain and IoT, make sure we are helping them not just track, but also run analytics on that to be able to really understand how the products are moving across the supply chain. How are we tracking the conditions which are taking them across? And a lot of those are complemented by blockchain plus analytic capabilities, which are built on top, which allows not only the organization, but their extended partner networks as well to really trust the data as it is moving. There's another aspect of blockchain which we are really exploring, and I think, as I briefly mentioned in our previous conversations, is around helping reduce disputes between organizations as they do supply chain transactions like direct ship to store, right? There are invoices which then need to be validated and cross-validated. Bringing in blockchain eliminates a lot of those processes. So that's been some of the platform areas where IBM has really been investing in from a blockchain space.
I just want to pick up on something, if you don't mind. You were trying to get to kind of really specific, usable, practical advice for people. You talked about dark data earlier when you were talking about AI and ML. And I'm interested in this because I think data is a phenomenal thing, but a data lake is no good without data divers that can go in and sort these sorts of things out. Do you think that within the supply chain has always been built on data? It's always been built on understanding where things are and optimizing that process. Is the supply chain a brilliant place to start implementing ML first and then that kind of AI engine on the top of it?
Yep. I think when we say dark data, the way I try to classify it is in supply chain, there's a transaction data, and then there's a lot of data around those transactions, which is a lot of times not captured or lost, or what I call as an opportunity lost to react to that, as the systems and applications try to make sense of what to do and how to respond. I think the biggest aspect of investing in supply chain, when we say how do you eliminate your supply chain, is about making sure we can identify areas where, even though you might have transaction visibility, using edge computing and using capabilities to bring in external data which is impacting that. So for example, you might have really good visibility with your suppliers of their supplying capacity, of how much they are manufacturing, but now if you start bringing in the condition, environmental information regarding that geography where they are situated, you start bringing in socioeconomic conditions, you start bringing in, for example, general trade shipping information of how shipping, for example, in Singapore, those lanes, how are they operating, at what capacity. That's that next level of, I would say, like the lighthouse, which is helping you make sure what is the data around your supply chain, around your transactions is also made visible. So I think when we look at a specific use case, like, helping suppliers understand, helping you understand how your suppliers shipment and on-time deliveries, they will be made, how will they react, not only based on the data lake which you have gathered from your transactions, but also from the real-time insights and machine learning based, more insights which are generated more from a predictive in nature rather than looking back. And so that's, I think, the direction where I would say investments in supply chain should start going in. I mean, we need to stop investing in rear view mirrors. Let me put it this way. I mean, I love this analogy that a lot of our supply chain analysis today we do is rear view mirror. We do forecasting, looking at what I sold. We do planning, looking at what happened last year, right? It has to be more what I see forward as we drive the car. We need to be looking forward and plan. And so putting in capabilities around data and how we eliminate what is ahead of us is going to be key here.
Absolutely, especially in this current time, because how do you measure an event that globally hasn't happened before? Certainly in the sense we've been measuring it. And I'm sort of really curious. And sorry, forgive me for sort of pushing on this point. It's because one of the conversation topics that's coming out of here, as I said, is that antagonism that people appear to believe exists between an efficient supply chain and a resilient and flexible supply chain. And my thinking is that actually AI and as you said, this much wider lighthouse of data can help resolve that. Now, here's a sort of very quick story which might help explain what I'm trying to get to. Starbucks, spoke to a chap from Starbucks the other week. He said they have effectively now created a recommendation engine that can offer personalized offers to every single one of its millions of customers across 170 countries, etc., etc. The problem was not creating the technology. The problem was getting the executives' buy-in to agree to let the engine run and not to try and step in the way. And I'm wondering if that is a similar problem in supply chain. The technology now exists to create these brilliant, that are both resilient and efficient, because you can find all these things. Is the problem getting people to trust the tech?
I couldn't agree more. I think rather than looking outside and giving you examples, I'd like to share example of how IBM itself, our own supply chain has transitioned and transformed. And by the way, a lot of people think that IBM is a solutions company, softwares, consulting, advisory, but we have an $8 billion supply chain as well. We build mainframes, we build products which are actually running servers, which are actually running a lot of people's infrastructure. A lot of organizations trust us with their data to run and manage that. So while we have that operation, if you see, there's a big challenge of making people understand how their lives will change. And that's what I think the big part in pushing this envelope while we're doing this engagement within IBM was coming up with a vision of what is, as an organization, we want to transition to, right? We want to be a cognitive enterprise. We want to be a transparent supply chain, but that's going to be a journey. So helping people build that experience-led view of that, this is how your organization is going to change, and this is how the roles are going to change. This is how the benefits are going to come in for each of them. It has been a long journey. It's been around 5 or 6 years, and we've gone through building, for example, new personas of how people do their jobs. Like, for example, we deployed an internal supply chain control tower, which helps us do a 360-degree view of the sales cycle, right from the time when a customer is engaging in conversations of buying a new set of servers, and then converting that into, as it goes through an order, how does it work through, and using NLP, for example, not to replace people's roles, but actually enhance their capability to get data in their hands and then make the decisions faster. So we've deployed a far more robust planning process, which has become more collaborative in nature, which has become more continuous in nature. So rather than a monthly SNOP or a bi-weekly planning cycle or some resolution rooms, we're actually now focusing on continuously every day people are on top of the data. So I think the big shift, if you look at getting people to agree to some of these things, is going to be one, which is a shift from not looking at it as something which is just tied to your revenue or others, but I think it's painting the picture of the journey. I think maybe just go back to the Starbucks example, as you said, right? If that whole conversation was couched as something like what could be initiated as a garage, like prove it out, and then when you try to scale it, start bringing in the experiences of how not only just the customer, but the people who are making or supporting that supply chain, getting it along with it, then you start getting much higher groundswell, which starts supporting those initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. You said NLP. We're not trying to replace people's jobs. Semantic. I don't like getting stuck in semantic alleyways, but they are so important, aren't they? And I think somebody once said, we don't use the word artificial. We try and say augmented intelligence. And it makes sense to me that it is about supporting people to do things that you simply don't have the capacity to do. And I think supply chain, that sort of thing, is important. So I can assure you, an awful lot more questions for Amar, but this isn't about me asking questions. Of course it is about you. So please do get your thinking caps on, raise your virtual hands, come and join us on stage and ask Amar whatever you would like. So let's go with maybe a little bit of a question around sort of COVID-19 and supply chain disruptions. So what are the specific challenges that you've seen businesses face?
I think a big challenge, especially around COVID, was having too many disparate data sources. It was very business as usual as people were able to operate. So, for example, knowing a demand or going into a demand planning cycle or any of those in a typical supply chain environment, it was well-established process. But now what happens when you can't trust your data, right? When you now have to figure out a way of predicting how different product segments are going to sell. So for example, I was in conversation with one supply chain executive at a retailer. They were seeing something really interesting happening in the supply chains, right? So they were seeing some of the products selling really fast. They were running out of stock. They were scrambling to respond while their stores were closed, and trying to figure out how they can release that inventory from stores to be made available so that they can do commerce. But some products weren't simply moving at all. So taking those decisions, helping them augment those decisions, I think that's a capability which we saw a big challenge which had to be addressed. So I think AI at this point, and as we started seeing a lot of organizations look towards AI as an augmentation method of helping them do those decisions better, I think we are slowly seeing far more adoption around that one. And the second challenge I saw is around resilience. I think you mentioned about resilient supply chain. I think the lack of data sharing between organizations, especially on the aspects which could impact the resilience, especially around how much capacities would you have, what are the backup or the failure points in your supply chain, how you could manage those. I think that has been something which got surfaced, in a very significant way. And then also, we saw some organizations, especially with really long supply chain cycles, actually start quickly reevaluating, is this supply chain worth it, right? Because they saw that because of the such huge supply chains they tend to manage, there's a huge liquidity problem as well. So, there's a cash problem because now they have inventory stuck in a different cycle. So I think this is leading to possibly some of the companies reevaluating their supply chain models, their business models per se even, saying maybe they are going to come up with new business models to look at, can I actually remove some of those complexity from my supply chain? Can I make it more simple? Can I start freeing up the cash which is getting caught up? Maybe because of I was thinking in a way which is pre-COVID. So I think the post-COVID resilience is also not going to be maybe putting in more guardrails. It's also simplifying the supply chain as well.